you do these evidence-based things, the breathing, the visualization of positive things. You can also do activities like relaxing your tongue. When we relax
Mhm.
our tongue, that sends a signal to our vagus nerve to relax all the organ systems in the body. So you do these things. That's what we've been having people do in this MRI study. And it was amazing. Within 5 minutes, they were in this meditative state, even if they weren't meditators before that. And again, we saw within 30 days their brains changing. So those are some of the evidence-based techniques that I recommend.
Welcome to the Soulful Sound Podcast, where you will find conscious, inspiring content to support your healing and transformation. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation for you to be part of our community, where more insightful conversations await to guide you to heal, grow, and thrive. Simply click the subscribe button. It means the world to me. Your support, your comments, everything is truly incredible. And we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. I'm so excited to be on this adventure with you, and your subscription is a valuable part of making it all happen. Thank you so much for joining, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are. Welcome back to our latest episode on the Soulful Sound Podcast. I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Dawson Church, who is the best-selling science writer and author of 3 award-winning books, The Genie in Your Genes, Mind to Matter, and Bliss Brain. Can't wait to jump into that. He is the founder of the Veteran Stress Solution, which has offered free PTSD treatment to over 22,000 veterans. And after retiring from active business management, Dawson has continued to teach and inspire through his presentations, podcasts, books, blogs, and so on and so on and so forth. Amazing. Welcome.
Wonderful to be here. Simone, thanks for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. Well, I often like to kind of kick off most of my conversations with a bit of a background because the work that you're doing is phenomenal. It's amazing. And I know that it's not something that you necessarily woke up doing, right? So there's this story or this experience of your life that brought you to this present moment. Can you share a little bit and how you got into working with meditation and tapping in EFT and all of that yummy stuff?
Yeah, I think that life's adversities affect people in different ways, and the responses to them are very different. And I spent about 20 years primarily studying, researching PTSD, mostly with veterans, but also with, for example, Rwanda genocide survivors, people in Haiti who've been affected by the earthquake there in 2010. So I've done a lot of PTSD research, and one of the interesting factors about these kinds of experiences, these shattering experiences that people have, is that two-thirds of people, when confronted with psychologically traumatic experiences, actually grow, stabilize or grow. About a third of people develop symptoms of PTSD. And so I think that my early childhood, which had a lot of ups and downs to it, inspired me to want to grow. I realized there had to be some better state than the misery I saw around me. And I remember reading the famous statement by Henry David Thoreau that most men lead lives of quiet desperation. And I thought when I was a kid, it's not really true. The people around me, they live lives of loud desperation. I don't want to be that way when I'm, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 years old. So I wanted to find a way out. I joined a spiritual community at the age of 15. I
Mm.
studied the world's great perennial philosophies. I got into psychology after that. And in a series of careers around publishing and research, I really looked into solutions. And Gestalt therapy was one I found very useful. But when I discovered tapping, especially tapping plus meditation, the combination of the two things, and I know you're into thought field therapy as well.
Yeah,
So I had the pleasure of publishing one of Roger Callahan's papers. I
fabulous.
did some presentations with his wife, Joanne. And so tapping on acupressure points is an incredibly potent stress reduction tool. And when I began to use that, I found that my symptoms of PTSD just began to vanish one after the other. I began to apply it with other people. And then once you've dealt with trauma, the question remains, you've cleared away all the nightmares and intrusive thoughts. What next? And then you can start to hit these transcendent states. So the last 5, 10 years, I've been much more interested in focusing on when we are able to release our trauma, what next, and how do we release our full human potential? And that's what my current research is focused on.
Yes, beautiful. And I mean, it's such a great example of coming from what can seem and we can deem as a traumatic beginning or, experience. And as you said, how we can grow from that. And I'm really curious what brought meditation and tapping together, because there's so many things that you do and can offer and help people with. And these are the two that somehow you've really focusing on right now. What's that marriage between them? Can you speak a little bit more to that?
There are so many personal growth techniques out there. There are just tens of thousands of teachers and teachings and paths and recommendations. And so what I love about science is it helps you really focus on what works, what's evidence-based. And so in my books, I talk about evidence-based ways of stress reduction and releasing our potential. And there are quite a few of them. There is time in nature. Time in nature is epigenetic. And it doesn't have to be going and spending a week in the woods or a week in a remote rural retreat center. A research project showed that just living in a city and finding a patch of grass and spending time there is able to trigger some of the same changes in gene expression that week in the countryside would do for you. So time in nature, conscious breathing, conscious living, mindfulness, grounding yourself in the earth, conscious movement, dance, spontaneous movement is so powerful. There are many of these, chanting, drumming, all of these have been shown to produce epigenetic effects. And so the reason I pick and teach these two of tapping and meditation is because tapping gives you a stress reduction method that works really quickly. So when someone has a panic attack, when somebody is afraid of an upcoming speech, when they're dealing with memory or childhood trauma, then if you are able to reduce that emotional impact quickly, then you have this ability to get over it and move on with your life. And when we put people in MRIs or hook them up to EEGs and we tap, we see when they think about, say, for example, the traumatic event from their childhood or recent adulthood, we see the midbrain, the emotional brain, get brightly lit up. But when they start tapping, even if they are dealing with a childhood trauma that has been afflicting them for decades, that emotional midbrain just very, very quickly, within a minute or two, regulates and calms down. So that's why tapping is so important. And I teach it. The other method, meditation, and again, you have to use an evidence-based meditation method. You can't just go and close your eyes and hope for the best. It doesn't work that way. When you close your eyes and hope for the best, your mind is flooded. The brain has the negativity bias that we've been measuring in psychology for a century. It defaults to thinking about the bad stuff. And so closing your eyes and hoping for the best, which I did when I was 15 years old, doesn't work. You need to have an evidence-based meditation method, and I cover those in my book, Bliss Brain. When you do that, when you set yourself up for well-being by an evidence-based set of meditation tools, then remarkable shifts happen in your brain. And in one randomized controlled trial I performed with some very talented colleagues, we found that in 1 month, in 30 days, the brain was already starting to rewire itself for resilience, joy, and creativity. 1 month, and we already saw structural changes in the brain. So with meditation, you change your brain and become resilient. With tapping, you get this very quick stress reduction method you can use any time of the day when you feel stressed. That's why these are the two fundamental practices I recommend.
Yes, beautiful.
Do you feel called to use your voice and sound in a healing capacity? Learn how to use your voice therapeutically to facilitate healing and well-being. Whether you want to go deeper in your own healing journey or facilitate others in theirs, this training is for you. This online training runs over 5 weekends and offers theory, practice, resources, and support on your path to becoming a qualified sound healer. and for your personal healing journey.
Yes, beautiful. And of course, I mean, everyone must go out and read your book. I would love to know if there is one thing that you can share about what is different in your meditation, this evidence-based research, as opposed to just close your eyes and hope for the best. What is that one thing that we can just hold now and go, well, what's different in what Dr. Dawson, presents out to the world? I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, so science is so useful because it tells us what is really effective. And one of the things that is moderately effective is to focus on your breath. But when you focus on your breath and you slow down your breath, especially if it's 5 seconds per in breath, 5 seconds per out breath, or slower, then that triggers activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's one thing, is slow breathing is shown to have these effects in quite a number of studies. Another thing that is effective is tapping. I begin each meditation with tapping. I just tap a little bit, tap on all the acupuncture meridians, and suddenly that I'm less distracted. My whole nervous system is calmer, and so that's really useful. When you fill your mind with positive ideas, you have to deliberately displace the negative ones. And Patanjali says this in the Yoga Sutras. He says you want to know how to shift your mind. He says keep on substituting, they call them samskaras in Sanskrit. Just keep on substituting positive samskaras for all the negative ones that fill your mind, and do this over and over and over and over, about 10 million times. And eventually you start to
just 10 million
develop new habits. So you do that, and so you do these evidence-based things: the breathing, the visualization of positive things. You can also do activities like relaxing your tongue. When we relax our tongue, that sends a signal to our vagus nerve to relax all the organ systems in the body. So you do these things. That's what we were having people do in this MRI study. And it was amazing. Within 5 minutes, they were in this meditative state, even if they weren't meditators before that. And again, we saw within 30 days, their brains changing. So those are some of the evidence-based techniques that I recommend.
No, that's beautiful. And that's a really very practical and easy start, right? Relax the tongue, connect to the breath, slow down, and all of these things. Because I love personally, I do a lot of meditation myself, and I love the element of sound, obviously, in my work. And that humming is such a great way to kind of get that vagus nerve, that vagal tone strong and relaxing. And just, it's so beautiful and so quick and easy. I think that sometimes people miss the small nuances that make the biggest differences. So I really love that you've given something really concrete on that.
Humming really does produce results in the body. And also, if you combine it with something that has and again, I'm drawing on the Yoga Sutras and the Crystal Illumination and many other ancient scriptures here, but if you focus on something really inspirational, like if you chant a name, and Anandamayi Ma, a great Bengali saint, was once asked, she was asked, how do you stop your mind from wandering? She said, when I chant the name of God, there is no room in my mind for anything else. So if you're chanting or humming or singing and you're using the name of a deity, whatever deity, it could be Mother Mary, could be Kuan Yin, could be Jesus, whatever your particular deity resonates with you, when you do that, now you have this focus of this exalted being. It is incredibly powerful. And it counteracts that brain's negativity bias. What happens in the brain is so interesting, Simone, because when we are closing our eyes without a focus for our thoughts like that, our default mode network shifts into gear, and our brains have these two areas that become very active, one of which is the mid-prefrontal cortex, and that's the seat of self, and also the seat of focus on the past, worries about the past, the problems of the past, and anxiety about the future. And so that part of the brain clicks on automatically when our brains aren't active. But when you start chanting, when you start humming, when you start vocalizing, when you start consciously breathing, then you're giving your brain a little bit of a task to do. So the default mode network shuts off, and another network called the task positive network clicks on, and that task positive network is associated with being happy. So right away, just doing that, you're pulling your brain out of negativity mode into happiness mode, and do that for a while each day. And again, within 30 days, your brain starts remodeling itself. It gets easier and easier and easier. After a while, bliss becomes your default setting. So you live a happy life and have a predisposition to happiness as you change your state of happiness to the trait of being happy. So it's not that hard to do. But again, those are all ways to do it. And the voice is a powerful way. It's your voice that resonates throughout your connective tissue, all the way throughout your body. When we use our voices, like, when we began talking before we went live, we were just saying a few things, and I could hear your voice, I could feel your energy, I could feel your whole body as a resonant chamber. You probably heard the same thing in mine. And again, those waves are traveling throughout your body, through all your connective tissue, and they're bathing your organs in that energy of who you are. So what a powerful practice.
Oh, it is. It is so beautiful. And I want to touch on two of those things. So bliss, I would love your definition of bliss, because it's such a beautiful word to use. And you spoke about happiness and joy, and you moved to bliss. And I know that one of your books is Bliss Brain. So we're talking about really blissful states from a, neurological perspective. Can you speak about bliss? What is bliss?
In 2017, I had a shattering experience happen in my life. I was awakened at 12:45 a.m., middle of the night, by my wife shaking me and saying something's really wrong. And I dashed outside, and there was a wildfire sweeping down the hill opposite our home toward us. And I just yelled at her, "We're getting out of here right now." We literally grabbed our car keys and sprinted for the car and drove out as the flames were engulfing the area. It was just a crazy, crazy experience. 5,400 homes were burned that night as this wildfire just tore through Northern California in October of 2017. And suddenly, just without any preparation or warning, we lost absolutely every possession we had. We lost our home, we lost our office, we lost everything. And so suddenly we found ourselves in this state of just being completely not knowing what to do next, and not being able to do much because there's nothing to do anything with. No home. The next day, one of our friends was able to get into the area and took photographs of the house. And where the house had been, there was just a concrete slab, chimney sticking up at one end, and ash. Same thing for the office, just ash and a concrete slab, nothing more left of them. So the following day, though, we woke up in a hotel a long way away. We'd driven a long way away to escape the flames that were still weren't under control. And we woke up the next morning. I felt so disoriented. And I said to my wife, "We need to meditate right now." And as I did, I felt myself drop into my body, and I was present again. And actually, I began to joke about the fire because I'd just seen these photographs of everything being destroyed. And I realized, there's stuff there that I didn't like. It's gone now, as well as the stuff I did like. So I began to see some elements of some glimmers of hope in the situation, just in a day or two. And it took us a long time to rebuild. We had a whole bunch of other disasters happen after that. But that whole next year, I was sitting in meditation every day and experiencing these extraordinary states of bliss. And they were completely contrary to the chaos around me. My business was in chaos. We went under financially. I'd have an operation. It was not a good year by any standard the following year. And I spent most of the year just completely blissed out. And I wasn't dissociating. I was handling my responsibilities. I was very present for the people around me. But I'd meditate and enter these states of bliss. So I began to look into the neurochemistry of these states, and especially into the molecule called anandamide. And anandamide docks with the same receptor sites in our brain as THC, the active molecule in marijuana. And so the meditator has this flood of anandamide in their brain. And after a while, you just start to feel really, really, really good. And so in that year of absolute chaos after the fire, I wrote the book Bliss Brain to explain anandamide to people, how we can generate anandamide in our brains in meditation, and serotonin, and dopamine, and oxytocin, and all these other wonderful neurochemicals, and they make us feel incredibly good. And so that's the ecstasy, the ananda, that is referred to in these ancient scriptures and the ancient mystical traditions. And you can get there. You can get there just by meditation. After a while, you produce anandamide Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 4 weeks. And you do it every day, and your brain starts to get habituated to these happy drugs. And so you like the serotonin, you enjoy the dopamine, you love the oxytocin, and you want more of them. And so I give people, wherever I do talks, I always give them a 30-day meditation challenge. Just meditate for 1 month. And the chances are, if you're flooding your brain with all those bliss brain neurochemicals for 30 days, you're going to not want to stop after 30 days. One lady walked up to me at a live event and said, Dawson, I took your challenge, a 30-day challenge. And I said to her, that's wonderful. What day are you on right now? She said, I'm on day 147 of 30. Because she was hooked. She's hooked on all these wonderful brain drugs. So that's what you want. You want to not just be moderately happy. I mean, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali talk about various kinds of happiness. And our kind of happiness, what the word, our happiness, word for happiness in Sanskrit is praya. As praya is very nice to feel praya. But above that, there's a stage very few humans know called sukha. And then the masters go to a stage called vishoka. Vishoka, sorrowless joy. You want sorrowless joy? Our brains are very equipped. The hardware is in our brains to experience sorrowless joy as your baseline state every single day. And then you start to get to the peak state, Ananda, which is about that. So these ancient masters, these mystics, had ways of explaining and experiencing happiness that go far beyond what we know as happiness. And that's the bliss of Bliss Brain. And the book Bliss Brain is how you get there and what happens to the brain when you do. It's based on about 400 scientific studies showing that Bliss Brain is not just attainable, it's actually our natural state.
Yeah, that is beautiful and so well articulated. Thank you for sharing that story as well, that personal story. It really does speak to seeing the opportunity within challenge and finding the bliss within the chaos, that happens around. I like the term "be the thermostat, not the thermometer," and that is really that's what I'm sensing you're referring to. That you are controlling within you, so that all the stuff going on the outside, that temperature is not affecting you in the same way. I think that's beautiful. So my story of meditation is I grew up in quite a spiritual, I suppose would say, background. My mother was heavily into metaphysics. She had a bookstore actually when I was growing up called Metaphysical Books, and I would be about 9 to 11 going to the store after school and reading all of these books on different types of metaphysics, whether it was from the things like Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra, all sorts of stuff. And our meditation practice was, we had sunrise meditations. I'm from the Caribbean, so we're talking about sitting on beautiful white sand, watching the sun come over the sea. It was just incredible. So my question in that, because I've had my meditation practices over 40 years and I've gone many different ways, but the way I learned with my mom was just sit there, close your eyes and allow. It wasn't something that she said, do this, do that. And then eventually, as I progressed, I tried different things, and sound is where I tend to step into my meditative state. However, the question I have on that is, how much does your external environment matter in your practice of meditation, or in your teaching of meditation, the environment outside of you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we think sometimes about the mystics as being in these beautiful spaces, and they're in a monastery, they're in a convent, they're in nature, they're in the Himalayas. And so that is true, but many of them came out of chaos. Many of them came out of very, very difficult and traumatic backgrounds. And you go and look at all these great meditators and great saints, and you find that many of them actually had severe maybe persecution, maybe trauma in their history as well. So it wasn't easy for many of them in terms of their environment. Another paradox that I've just been interested in, and I'm probably going to write a book about it in time, but traumatic experiences, again, often lead to post-traumatic growth, not post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I was talking to a woman last week, and she was raised in orphanages and then was in jail most of her teenage years. And she awakened there in the most adverse circumstances. Another researcher at Leeds Beckett University in the UK has done a whole series of case histories of people who've awakened in prison. So this is not a conducive environment, and people can awaken there. So your environment does help. It's definitely easier if you are in a warm, safe place, if you're well nourished, have a roof over your head. And people awaken in all kinds of other places as well. They awaken under very adverse circumstances. So, like, I have a beautiful couch, I have a fireplace, I have candles, I have a enormous quartz crystal Kuan Yin that weighs about 200 pounds, and a massive statue of the Buddha carved in Thailand a century ago. And I was all these beautiful things. And it's very, very nice to be in that space. But what you'll find too is that after you meditated, even in an ordinary room in your house, like the house that burned down, it was a really ordinary house. It was just built in the 1950s, little, small, cramped, no architectural features or imagination whatsoever. And people would walk in after we lived there for a few years and say, "What a beautiful space. Oh my goodness, this place is just so amazing." And I think they're not seeing the physical space, they're feeling the energy.
Yeah.
So you will infuse your space with energy, even if it's a prison cell, by your consciousness. Mind to Matter has over 400 studies showing that we are affecting things all around us. Water, when we hold, touch, and interact with water with intention, with healing intention, we literally change the molecular structure and the bonding angle between the hydrogen and the oxygen atom in water. So we are conditioning space all around us. You walk into a monastery or a convent where people have been meditating for 1,000 years, and you just want to fall down and kiss the ground when you feel the energy there. You walk into a place where people have been fighting or arguing, and you can feel it. And your mother probably just in her body was making that sand a sacrament.
Yes,
By being there.
Yes. Yeah, and it did help to have the warm sun and the beautiful scenery. But I asked that question because I do talk about this in my work as well with sound, and that you can be anywhere and sound, and you can be in any environment. And I remembered in my touring days, jumping on a touring bus in the music industry side of things, and we'd be all on the bus, everybody's talking, we're in between states, and I literally just sit there for 20 minutes and go into meditation with everything going around. And it took a while to get there, but I noticed in those moments something quite interesting in the tuning in and tuning out when I wasn't in that beautiful space with the plants and so I just thought I'd check in with you based on what you know. And I love that it is that inside out approach, that the external environment is definitely what is affected energetically by what you create within yourself, which is beautiful.
Yeah, and sometimes when I've been in very difficult physical circumstances, what I'll do is I'll deliberately ramp up the energy. So there's adverse energy, there's negative energy around me. What I will do is I will just dial up the positive energy inside of me, and that becomes radiant. And again, in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali talks about radiant beings. What we're finding in one big research project with over 2,000 meditators is that initially they are having this experience of light and love and radiance inside. And so you feel bliss brain. It's in your brain, it's in your body, it's in your emotional realm. But after a while, it starts to escape into the space around you. And again, this is talked about in many of the ancient scriptures, how these are radiant beings and you can feel it when you're around them. I remember being in an auditorium with a wonderful spiritual teacher called Chidvilasananda in my 20s, and there were about 2,000 people in the auditorium, and I was sitting there, she was on stage in front, and I could feel her from the back of the room. It was so powerful. Some of the spiritual teachers that I've met are have such an intense radiance to them. You can feel it when you walk into the room. So what I do, for example, when I do retreats, even virtual retreats, like I was doing a virtual event with about 600 people last night, and you could feel the radiance in that virtual room. We're all there on Zoom. And you can feel this radiant energy that's connecting us all over the world with each other. So after a while, it begins as inner radiance. After a while, it becomes outer radiance. And the Yoga Sutras talk about extending, first of all, about this far away from your body, then many meters, many yards away from your body. Eventually, you're one with the infinite universe, and there is no end to the radiance. So we start to be there. We start to travel there after a while, and we human beings again have this remarkable ability. We have these brain structures, and in Bliss Brain, I actually describe all these there are four key parts of the brain that do this. But when we are activating them, we literally have the ability in our brains to extend this radiance, and it just goes throughout the universe as we are one with the all that is. So,
Well, I mean,
it
that's
extends.
definitely the principle of how distance healing works, being able to do the work over Zoom or send healing and intention out to a person or a place and things like that. So I love that. Now, I did want to kind of backtrack very quickly on something that you mentioned, because I think it's really interesting and I wonder your thoughts on this. You spoke about chanting names, and whether, whichever deity or whatever feels congruent to someone. Now, I love, and this is something I do often in my work, chanting, sounding someone's name to them. Can you speak
Beautiful.
to that piece? If you're sounding your own name, have you done any research about what happens when you're calling yourself home, as I like to call it, with chanting or sound? Talk to that a little if you can.
Yeah, I haven't, there's no research on that I'm aware of, but I do know that in Taoism, they talk about before we begin our soul journey, dropping into a body and then having an incarnational journey for a few dozen years.
Yes.
What happens is that there is like a soul conference with our guides, and then after that we drop into a body, we have our lifetime, then we leave our body, and then we assemble and we evaluate our lifetime after that. And one of the things that the guides talk about in those soul conferences is the name. And they actually don't care too much about the consonants, but they care a lot about the vowels. So you'll find people will have a name with a, o, u, o, various vowel sounds in it. And so they try and arrange for the parents to call the baby that name that way, and the name of those vowels. And so find the vowels, find the big open sounds in your own name, and then see what you can do with it when you use it. I know for me, a big moment was when I became naturalized as a U.S. citizen, and the first question on the immigration form was, "What do you want your name to be?" Because when you become a citizen, you're allowed to choose any name you like. I could have called myself Moishe Rabinovitz.
What a wonderful name.
I sat there for weeks. I couldn't fill out the form. It's like, wow, I could be anything. What am I put there? And after like literally for weeks and weeks and weeks, that form sat there not filled out because I couldn't get past the first question is, what do you want your name to be? Because I was thinking about all these wonderful names. And eventually I picked up my pen and I wrote my own name, Dawson Church. And that was so powerful to actually claim my name out of all the names I could have. So you're going to find you can really resonate with a name. Now, that may not be your birth name, too. For me, it was my birth name. But there are people who change their names. I know in in many spiritual traditions, you get a spiritual name. And
Yeah.
sometimes you'll have far more resonance with that spiritual name, or you'll feel drawn to another name. Maybe your parents got it wrong. Maybe they called you Moshe Rabinovitz, and your name was meant to be something else completely. So
That would be an interesting one to sound for sure. Yes. I find it so healing in some instances, as you said, spending time in those vowels allows people to connect with something, whether it is to release or to call home. And I had a client once who spoke about not ever feeling connected to her name. So she didn't want me to sound her name. And in later, she found out from her parents when she was in her early 20s, and I think she at that time had changed her birth name, that her mother, before she was born, had miscarried and decided to call her by this name, the miscarried child by this name, got pregnant again. She was born, and she gave her the same name that she was going to name the miscarried child. So she came into this incarnation never feeling like she was that person, that name, that energy, those vowels. And so through sounding, we were able to release that and have her call in the resonance, which was what she decided her name was going to be moving forward. It's so powerful. And I was just curious about that because you mentioned sounding the deities and sounding in that meditation or chanting. It's beautiful work.
Yeah, yeah. And then again, finding the name that you resonate with in that being. Which being to you carries the inner light you want to emulate? What's the emotional feeling? What's the spiritual resonance that you want to evoke? Is it Francis of Assisi? Is it Teresa of Avila? Is it Rumi? Is it like there's one guide I had for a long time, and she was just the goddess of laughter, and I tend to laugh a lot anyway. To have the goddess of laughter as a guide definitely gave me a lot more permission than I had before. So you can find these archetypes, and these archetypes are resonant in
Yes.
human consciousness. Are they real? Doesn't really matter. They are resonant in human consciousness. They're archetypal, and archetypes tend to be found in similar form in every single culture in the world, indigenous cultures, Western cultures, Eastern cultures, these archetypal figures. So find the archetype that most inspires you with your full potential. And so what is that archetype? Is it Joseph? Is it Mary? Is it Saint Teresa? Is it Saint Francis? And then if you bring that being, like I'm just looking around my room right now, and I have, there's the Buddha, and there's Jesus, and there's my uncle who is an amazing guy, and I'm just finding these beings all over the place. And so you want to fill your mind and your experience, not necessarily with the local self that you are only. What about the non-local self? What about the great self? What about the transcendent self that you know is there and you haven't yet expressed? Many people just live in such a confined little space, Simone. And so whether it's through the voice, whether it's through your expression, but letting go of those limitations and letting that glorious divine being that you are and came here to be just shine out. It's going to probably offend some people and trigger some people, and everyone won't like it. That's fine.
Yes, that's fine.
Love it anyway.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's the power of entrainment. You're either going to join this beautiful frequency or not feel congruent with it and find a different one. I also love that the understanding of entrainment and that more powerful frequency or vibration, bringing the other ones into harmony with it. It's powerful, and we do it all the time on unconscious level. So let's bring some awareness to it. So my question now, let's move on to tapping, because I love tapping, and we spoke about this before. So for those listening who, I think tapping is what kind of really widely known now, but for those listening, from your experience, can you talk about those acupressure points, acupuncture points, chi, meridians, whatever word feels right for you? Can we speak about that and what tapping actually does? And that can be from the science behind it, as well as how it can help. Well, there's a twofold question, how it can help with anxiety or emotions, things like that. So let's talk about what tapping is and then move on to that piece.
Tapping is simply using your fingertips to tap on acupuncture points. There are these acupoints all over the body. There are over 300 of them. They flow in 14 meridians. They're in lines. And those meridians have names like small intestine, spleen, gallbladder, central governing and so on. And so tapping is, rather than using acupuncture needles, is simply stimulating them with your fingertips by rubbing them or tapping on them, percussion. And when you tap on them, that sends calming signals to your brain. It's just a very calming activity to tap on one of these acupuncture meridians. And so we just tap on all of them. But we have people think about things that bother them, either in the present or in the past. So when we work with somebody, for example, on childhood trauma, we will have them be remembering the worst things that happen to them sometimes, but they're tapping. Now, when we think about the bad stuff and we aren't tapping, usually, we don't really usually want to go there. We don't really want to think about that time we were beaten up or bullied or abused, or it's a very unpleasant memory. When you recall that memory and you tap, now what's going on is your brain is getting two conflicting signals. One is the memory saying, go into fight or flight. When you're thinking about the boy who beat you up outside of your second grade classroom, go into fight or flight, go into the threat mode. So that's what's being transmitted by the memory to the nervous system in your brain. When you tap, your brain's getting a second signal, and that signal is a calming signal. Now it's getting both the triggering, emotionally triggering signal and the calming signal. What does it do? It recognizes that the physical signal of safety from tapping is the predominant one, and now it recognizes that that memory of being beaten up outside the second grade classroom is not a real threat to your survival in the present moment. And once it starts to treat it as just a memory, an emotionally neutral memory, rather than an excuse to go to fight or flight, then when that happens and you break the association between the memory and going to fight or flight one time, it stays broken. Like I worked with one Iraq veteran, and he had just many, many memories of dead people, dead friends, just destruction, all kinds of horrendous scenes from his time in Iraq. And I worked with him on one particular one when he had to clean the uniform of a friend of his who'd been shot to send it back home to his next of kin. And just the smell of the uniform, the blood and the gore on the uniform, it was just a horrendous memory. And he called it the worst day of my life. But he was tapping while he was thinking about this. And he went from being extremely triggered around the uniform to eventually, after tapping, being totally calm. It was just the uniform. I ran into him about 3 months after that and asked him again about the uniform and his number, how triggered he was. And he said, I'm glad I had the job of cleaning the uniform, because it was an act of love, and I was able to transmit that love to his family back home by cleaning it. So here he'd gone from seeing that event as a trigger for fight or flight to an act of love. Radical shift in his thinking as a result of tapping and pairing that memory with a soothing signal of tapping.
Wow, that's such a beautiful story. And I love that. What a, as you say, radical shift and transformation in that way of that perception and the way he looked at that. It's beautiful. In the tapping that I've done, I remember my youngest, who's much older now, but when he was in school, he would sometimes feel anxious about school. And that's what we would go to. We would go to tapping, and at points where he wasn't ready to tap himself, I would offer the tapping for him if he felt like, just hug me and we'll tap together. So talk to me about the possibility or potential of let's say distance tapping. Is that something that you do in your work, or people need to tap themselves, or can you tap on their behalf, let's say?
Good questions. Usually we encourage people to tap on themselves. We don't tap on people if we're practitioners. We want them to be empowered to do it themselves. So typically we're tapping along with them while they tap on themselves, and then they have the power over their well-being, not us conferring healing onto them. So we'd rather self-empower people. EFT is very much about self-empowerment. Distant tapping is very, very interesting. There was one study done of it by a friend of mine, and he found 100 case histories of distant tapping. And it was interesting that even people being, when there was, say, for example, a friend
Mhm.
tapping for a sick friend at a distance, sometimes of over 1,000 miles, that there was often an effect that was felt by the recipient. So there's a lot of research on distant healing. I remember once I was sick, and a qigong master friend of mine
Mm.
was doing qigong, uh, projecting qi for me at a distance of about 2,000 miles. And he said, "Okay, 8 a.m. in the morning, wake up in the morning, be there, ready at 8 a.m. I'm going to send you qi at 8 a.m." At 8 a.m., I felt like I had been hit by a hurricane. It was the energy was just immense. As this
Mm.
Qigong master said to me, I could feel it readily. So there's a lot of research on distant healing and just a little bit of research on distant tapping as well, and
Mm.
it can be effective.
Yeah, I was wondering about the distance tapping because I offer a lot of distance healing and I see the shifts and my clients feel it whether we're in the same room or not. But it's tapping isn't something that I've done in a distance in that particular way. So I was curious if it's something you knew about, but definitely we'll look at that and see how I can add some of those amazing tapping techniques. And of course, anything that you do in a with clients, distance or not, we know how important it is to have, permission and consent and so on as we work with people in their energy field. So
Yeah, it is important to get that. And we have a
yeah,
whole course on ethics for energy healers. There's a
yeah.
textbook called the Energy Healers Ethics Handbook, which I'm editing right now, and it's been in print for about 15 years. And it's part of we train several hundred practitioners a year,
Mhm.
and we have every one of them go through the ethics course, the ethics handbook, and learn those ethical principles. One of those is asking for permission for distant work, for anything that's not, for example, evidence-based. We want to make sure that the client knows that this is something that maybe the healer thinks is helpful. There may not be research on it, and we get clear, informed consent.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so the question I have on that for you, because I think that the science and evidence-based research is really important, especially with what people would consider alternative ways of health and healing and, wanting to have a greater understanding. In your life right now, in your own practices, your own spiritual or esoteric side of things, do you feel that all of it needs to have that approach? Do you feel that there is something in the I don't know, maybe mystical is the word that I'm looking for, of not understanding how something works, but just enjoying it as is in your particular practices right now?
I think that what we're doing is beginning to get a neurological picture of what goes on in the brain during some of these states described by ancient scriptures. And so, for example, I've been working on a new book, and one chapter is about samadhi. And samadhi is this term used in Eastern religions for extraordinary states of consciousness. And there are, by one count, there are about 15 different states of samadhi. So, and some of them are very, very different from each other. So what I'm doing is personally, I'm exploring all of them. I'm just traveling to them. I'll sit down in the morning, meditate, and I'll have an interest in going to, for example, there's one called Nirbija Samadhi, which I particularly enjoy. So I'll go spend a while in Nirbija Samadhi. Now it's quite hard to get to Nirbija Samadhi. You have to move through Vitarka Samadhi, Vichara Samadhi, Ananda Samadhi, Asvita Samadhi, Karma Mega Samadhi, Asana Prajnara Samadhi. So eventually you can get to Nirvana Samadhi. So it's a really extraordinary ecstatic state. What's
Mm.
intriguing to me is that we're now able in neuroscience to attach brain correlates to some of these states. We know which regions of the brain are active, and they're different regions of the brain. So for example, Asmita Samadhi is very, very different from Ananda Samadhi, and the brain regions that it engages are different. So personally, I'm enjoying going to these spaces. In fact, I used to travel many, many months of the year. I used to travel all over the world and teach and lecture and work with people. And I've stopped because I'm far more interested in traveling inwardly than I am hauling my body around on planes into hotel rooms, different parts of the world. So those travels are interesting to me, and then starting to map the neural correlates of that. What's going on in our brains? Which brain regions are active? And then how can we train people to activate those brain regions? Because if you know the neuroscience and which brain regions are important for a particular state, you then train people directly into that state without all of the philosophical and spiritual rigmarole there is. Like there is so much spiritual window dressing. I know I spent like 20 years in a spiritual organization, and there was real value there, and I'm so grateful I did. But I look back and 90% of it was just window dressing, and 10% of it was really valuable. And science tells us what that 10% is. So now with neuroscience, we can say to people, do this, relax your tongue, breathe 6 seconds in and out, and you're going to have an altered experience. Whereas before, you'd have had to join a spiritual order and go believe in a guru and donate money and become a vegetarian and give up wine and coffee. And that's pretty much where I dropped out, was when the guru said, no wine, no coffee. It's like, oh.
I'm out. I love that. And science, I mean, science is really, to me, the study of spirituality. It is putting, bringing that evidence into a lot of the things that we can't always explain at the beginning or at the start of the experience. And I love that. I think it's so important. And I'm really curious if you'd be open to giving us a little bit of a tapping demo or tapping meditation, if you're happy to lead one for a short while and just give us that experience. I think our listeners would love that experience.
What I can do is I can do the first part of a meditation, because the first part of the meditation just moves you into that alert, that relaxed state. And this is a method called eco meditation, ECO meditation. It's free. It's on the web. I developed it in around 2008, 2009. It's really easy. You just do several evidence-based things, and it drops you into this deep state. So we can do that, and it'll show you how in 5 minutes you can be in that state. We'll go there, and then we'll spend a few minutes in there, then we'll come out again.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay, so get comfortable. Usually sitting upright is a good idea. Like I rarely lean back. I'm almost always sitting up straight, just allow that energy to flow in my spine and body. And then we'll keep our eyes open initially for the first part of this as we tap through the points. So begin first by eyes open, just thinking about something in your last couple of weeks of your life, something that happened in the last 2 weeks that bothered you, that annoyed you, irritated you, triggered you. And as you think of it now, you're still triggered. So somebody said something or someone did something that was triggering. Think of an event and give it a number on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no emotional energy, 10 being extreme distress. So find your event, find your number. So you've got your number, you've got your event. Now we'll get eyes open to start with. We'll regulate your body with a little bit of acupressure by tapping over here on the side of your hand. Again, eyes open, focusing on the event, that triggering event, and noticing your breathing. We're tapping, we're breathing. And that event happened. It was an emotionally triggering event. It shouldn't have happened. It was miserable. And we're breathing, we're tapping. We made it through. The side of hand. Tap on top of your head. That's your governing meridian. Runs all the way up the back of your body. Notice your breath. Also think about the event. What was the most triggering part of the triggering event? Again, your eyes are open, focused on the event and your breath while you tap. Take 2 fingers, tap on your eyebrow where it meets the bridge of your nose. Again, eyes open, focusing on the event, focusing on your breath. Tap on the side of your eye. Think again about the event and the most triggering part of that triggering event. What was said or written or done bothers you. And notice your breathing. Tap under your eye. It's a meridian that ends right under your eye here. Breathe. Notice your breath. Focus on the event and your breath at the same time. Tap under your nose. Thinking about details of the event. Tap on your chin. Emotional details, intense details of the event. Tap on both sides under your collarbone. Notice your breathing. Think about the event. Cross your arms and tap under your arms with your open hands. Feel your breath. Think about the event again. Tap on the side of your hand. And then close your eyes, relax your hands. Notice your breath again. And imagine your breath flowing in and out through your heart, through the center of your chest. And slow your breathing down to 6 seconds per in-breath and 6 seconds per out-breath. Keep on breathing, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, through your heart. And notice the volume of space inside your feet. Notice the volume of space inside your hands. Notice the volume of space between your eyes. Notice the volume of space inside your tongue. And relax your tongue completely, letting it rest on the floor of your mouth. As you breathe 6 seconds in and out through your heart. Then bring to mind now a being that loves you unconditionally. It could be a saint, spiritual teacher, an angel, a guide, an animal, a pet, an archetype. This being loves you unconditionally. And as you breathe in and out through your heart, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, send a beam of heart energy to connect with this being. Notice the color of the heart energy beam connecting you with this being. Notice the shape and size of this heart energy beam connecting you with this being of unconditional love. Notice the breath flowing 6 seconds in and out through your heart. Notice your tongue and how relaxed it is on the floor of your mouth. Without saying anything, just silently affirm with me, I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be here. I deserve to express my full potential. I deserve to be happy. Notice again that energy beam connecting you to this source of unconditional love. And then very gently disconnect that beam and bring it all the way back inside your own heart. Feel the gratitude that comes from unconditional love. And feel how good your body feels to have welcomed this unconditional love. Notice your tongue relaxed on the floor of your mouth. Notice your breath 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And notice the infinite space between your eyes. And with the next 3 breaths, prepare to return your attention back to your environment, back to the room around you. Notice the volume of space between your eyes. Notice the volume of space inside your hands. Notice the volume of space inside your feet. And ground yourself fully to the earth, to the here and now. Grounding yourself to the planet through your feet. And with the next breath, open your eyes, look around you. Notice any round yellow objects in your environment. Are there any round yellow objects there? Notice any cubes. Are there any cube-shaped objects in your environment? What's the smallest green object you can see from where you are now? As you ground yourself through your feet fully back into the earth. Welcome back to the here and now.
Ooh.
That was 10
Oh
minutes.
my goodness.
In just 10 minutes, we can achieve these very deep states. So
Beautiful. Mm.
what's possible, what we're meant to be able to do with our brains, and we just unlock all these wonderful neurochemicals. When we do that, we feel good, and that perpetuates itself. The effect lasts about 48 hours from doing 10 minutes of meditation. So it's a powerful practice.
Thank you so much. I'm still there and grounding at the same time. So beautiful. And also just to say, for those of my listeners who are not on YouTube, you can join us on YouTube if you want to see those tapping points. And of course, I'm happy to share some links and resources so you can follow along. But please do listen to this when you have a moment in your listening experience to be safe and to sit down and to let go. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful.
Joy, Simone. Yeah, thanks for sharing it.
Beautiful. Oh, yes. I'm so excited. I can't wait to share this yumminess. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your presence, for your wisdom. And I really just celebrate you and all that you are and the work you're doing to help people to unlock their highest potential, to heal and to thrive in all the ways that you do. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's a joy. And I see you doing the same thing. I'm so grateful for your work as well. And that's what we're all meant to do. We're all meant to be those radiant beings. We are meant to enjoy bliss brain inside our own heads, but after a while it begins to escape and just radiate all around us. And then we walk into a room, everyone around us gets happier. So we're meant to be those radiant beings.
That's it. That's beautiful. And I have one final question for you, Dawson, and that is, what is your soulful sound to the world, that self-prayer desire that you wish upon the world?
It's more than a wish. It's a reality, which is that our world, our civilization here on Earth in the 21st century is making rapid progress toward human good. And the news is filled with all the war, violence, climate change, very real problems, racial, income inequality. There are all kinds of problems we definitely have, and I'm not minimizing any of them. But if you look at the data, and I cover the data in my books, we are in the middle of an unprecedented era of global thriving, and carbon emissions per person have dropped by 2/3 in the last 25 years. All wealth has risen, global wealth has risen threefold in the last 40 years by all kinds of other metrics: infant mortality, maternal mortality, reforestation. The two biggest countries in the world, India and China, have had a dramatic resurgence in forest cover since 2000. So there are all kinds of ways, metrics that show that we and the planet are actually doing much better, and we are on this wonderful trajectory. So I so want people to understand that we live in a time of thriving. We can thrive individually as a species, and as a planet, I believe that we're on this path toward thriving, solving a lot of our huge problems that we have, and that the future that my grandchildren will enjoy is infinitely better than the one that I knew when I was their age. So I'm not just an optimist. The science, the data, just completely corroborates these stories. And I want everyone to understand and know that you are meant to thrive. You are designed to be in bliss much of the time. Sure, we all have challenges. Our world has challenges, but can we be happy? We can be in ecstasy despite them all. And that's the
Oh,
truth.
yes, 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 and more yes. Well, thank you for bringing Bliss to us today. Really appreciate that in you. Until next time, thank you so much, Dr. Dawson Church.
What a blessing.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Your support, your comments, and everything is truly incredible. And we're only at the beginning of this awesome journey together. If you love this episode, hit that like and subscribe button and make sure to check out our other episodes. Thanks so much for being with us today. Sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.